Hello and welcome to our webinar, Unlock Success at the Edge with HPE. I'm your host, Katie Bavoso from the Channel Company. The acceleration of digital transformation is driving new demands for data analytics and business optimization everywhere. Edge computing is quickly rising to meet these needs. Last year, IDC valued the global edge computing market close to $100 billion and has predicted that market will grow to $112 billion by the end of this year. In the coming years, edge computing spend is estimated to accelerate to an impressive 16% compound annual growth rate compared to 3% for the traditional data center. Edge computing presents an immense opportunity for solution providers, but it also comes with complexities you need to prepare for. Fortunately, HPE and Intel have the knowledge, solutions, and support to further your path to success. And joining me now to discuss this is Dennis Vilfort, Director of Edge Computing at HPE, and Rick Lisa, Director of IoT Business Development for North America at Intel. Welcome to both of you. Let's get started with segment one. What is the edge and where is it? So Dennis, how do you define the edge and what are the benefits of computing there?
We have a very simple definition here at HPE, and that is the edge is everywhere, anywhere that's not the data center. It's that simple, right? So when you put, for example, a computer to do facial recognition out in a store, to do things like behavioral recognition, to cut down some sort of bad behavior. If you put a computer and cameras into a supermarket, when you put computer and cameras into a casino, this is all edge computing. It's not a data center like the way we used to think of it, headquarters, a big room, air conditioned, raised floor, not that. And the reason for this, and this is super important to understand, the reason that we have edge computing now is that over the last couple of decades, the compute firepower we have has continued to increase. We're finding ways to continuously put more and more compute into a smaller and smaller space. So the power of yesterday's data center can now be in your coffee shop. So this is real. And then you start saying, well, what's the benefit of doing it that way? Because when you put high density sensors, light cameras, sensors, temperature, all that stuff, and you want to compute upon that in real time, like for example, for quality assurance in manufacturing, that's easily 100 megabytes per second. If you were to send that to a cloud provider and wait for that to be computed over there and then come back, the window of opportunity would actually you'd be past that. So you have maybe a second to react and you have a second to capture 100 megabytes worth of data. You simply cannot afford sending it anywhere. It needs to stay right where it is at the edge and be computed right there in real time. So it's a classic case of don't send your data to where the computers are. Take your computer and put it out where the data is occurring.
Dennis, we're going to stay with you for this next question. HPE wants to help channel partners become the trusted edge outfitter. What exactly does edge outfitter mean?
When you're thinking about putting computers and storage and software into a individual place of business, it could be a coffee shop, it could be a manufacturing plant. You are outfitting that location so that they can do real-time analytics on their data flow that's happening at that location. What we want our partners to go and do is be the trusted advisor that help outfitting their customers, whether it's a hospital, a hotel, a gas station. Those are locations and they all need a little nano-sized data center. They need all that packaged up in a neat solution that deliver results. So that's what we're here to do, because HPE, together with Intel, we have a tremendous set of building blocks to do that. We have ruggedized computers, we have networking with Aruba, we have software. GreenLake actually is the operating environment that makes that cloud possible in the coffee shop or at the manufacturing location. So when you look at all that, you're helping us and we're helping you to outfit your customers for success at the edge.
And Dennis, I know that you've touched on it in there, but I really want to make sure that we define intelligent edge from HPE. Can you spend a little time talking specifically about intelligent edge?
When we double click on intelligence, what we're really discussing here is AI. What does this really mean? Well, I need to do a couple of things to be intelligent about it. First, I need to connect to all my sensors, cameras, all that stuff. And I also have to not connect to things that would do me harm. So the whole notion of putting like a data center in a coffee shop, Well, there could be evildoers in that coffee shop trying to get onto your network. How do we stop that from happening? We have protection at the edge. So connection with protection. They start saying, okay, that's lovely, but don't we need to do something else to be intelligent? Yes, we do. Once we get the data flow in, we have the ability to do real-time analytics on it with GPUs, with AI, and then make a decision right there and then. So we can make decisions that are localized based on the data that's observed in that locality. So together, that's actually being very intelligent. That basically is distributed intelligence, if you will. It is no longer necessary to get all that data to the data center to do smart things. Finally, I want to say this: all this distributed gear now, if you have 30,000 coffee shops worldwide, that seems to be a rather large estate that has to be fleet managed. Well, we use AI here as well to actually manage the health of the machines. Why? Because the people in the coffee shop are not IT people. So this has to be intelligence at two levels. It's intelligence when it has to, we would deal with the customer's data flow, but it's also intelligence when it comes to keeping the business running.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And Rick, we're going to get you involved in the conversation. So first question thrown your way. How does the HPE Intel platform of solutions benefit partners in this space?
You have to remember that between Intel and HP, what we're building is sizes of compute that get deployed efficiently based on the workload you're trying to manage. I think workload orchestration is a big part of this. And then there's a second part called workflow orchestration. Workload is bringing different applications to bear in order to run that coffee shop, as Dennis used that example. There's a lot of applications that run that coffee shop. There's a lot of work process that's done in that coffee shop that's also managed with that same technology. Between HP and Intel, what we're doing is a couple things. One, we're bringing together different sizes of compute, but they're fundamentally compatible, right? We're not creating silos of compute. We're creating a compute continuum. And from another big edge element, by the way, is people, right? People are probably the biggest contributor of data we've got. So when we look at the person edge and the machine edge, where work is done and where operations are executed, we bring a level of compute to that can be scaled up levels to deal with additional workloads and to allow for efficient workflow. So when you put those two things together and you look at the various technologies that are being applied, we're giving, small business the same opportunity we're giving medium business and big business to apply these technologies to the purpose of their business, to really deploy the things I think they're after, which is what are those compelling experiences for my edge, my intelligent edge that I'm trying to deploy that bring value back to the enterprise and to my constituents. And so I think when you start looking at the fact that many of the technologies we're talking about here are commercial off-the-shelf technology, they're common to all of our integrator and solution provider partners. There's deep experience on the various types of software technologies that get applied here. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about how we're bringing sort of that IT data center experience on a scale basis down to these OT areas. And as you build those common links, you're making it easier and easier for IT and OT operational technology users to get on the same page, to basically be able to get into meaningful discussions around what's important to the enterprise, which is delivering compelling experiences that are founded on people and machinery that in turn is delivering, results for the business, and doing that on a compatible, scalable compute continuum of technology that goes from that intelligent edge to the core, to the cloud, and then back out to the client technologies, which are both machines and people. So it's a fully integrated experience that both Intel and HP are trying to deliver. And I think that's a real advantage. We're bringing our integrators and being able to become forward advisors to their customers in this space.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. You're going to start us off actually in segment 2, growth opportunity at the edge. So Rick, what kinds of customers are driving growth at the edge, and how can HPE and Intel add value to this conversation?
The opportunities in this space are incredible, and personally, I believe they're unlimited. I think we look at it across every single industry, whether it's the manufacturing industry or the healthcare industry, retail, hospitality. government industries. I think the number of opportunities are unlimited, and I think that's being driven in large part by, the recent, conditions we're dealing with, from a market environment, COVID and all the things it's driven is actually accelerating the demand for and the need for digital technologies to be able to actually run our businesses not only in its analog form, the real everyday, day-to-day things that we do as business owners, operators, and employees, but then there's this whole thing of being able to do it remotely, like this session. How do you run, a remote digital experience at the same time that's actually a complete duplication of what you're doing in your everyday analog business, right? And so we have to make these two things compatible, and they have to be integrated. I think there's this increasing demand for the ability to integrate digital technologies and other things Dennis talked about before. How do I start bringing data analytics and the ability to look at preventative, prescriptive, and predictive, environments within my business? How do I start, building that digital twin of my analog environment so that I can actually see and compare the analog performance of my business against the theoretical performance of a digital entity at the same time. And so as you start looking at all these opportunities to improve business, to improve return on investment, to actually bring value back to the enterprise using technology, I think every industry is looking how to do this. And whether it's supply chain, or whether it's asset tracking and logistics, whether it's machine maintenance, we could go on and on the use cases. Every industry has that need. And I think we're in a fantastic position to be able to help companies get to the root of what's important in their business and, to move it forward. And I think where HP and Intel sit, because we're sort of at the foundational level of every element of the technology to be deployed into these markets, we're in a great position to help not only our end users, but these channel partners become very consultative with the customers and how to apply these technologies to the value problems they're trying to solve.
Rick, let's talk about partner opportunities at the edge. Obviously, you say that the opportunities in many ways are endless, but why should partners sell customers at the edge?
As Dennis said, I think we're entering a phase of business where we're no longer looking at these sort of siloed compute areas, and the technologies are applicable across all different areas of the business, right? So I think that we have to start thinking about the environment as a compute continuum. And so when you look at the opportunities at the edge, especially for our channel partners, there was probably a division between, the operational technology space and the information technology space, and that there was sort of this belief that one didn't understand the other. And I even heard a story recently, interestingly enough, where one customer was saying that, bringing virtualization and containers and orchestration into my OT environment is the IT guys just trying to figure out how to take over my world. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think that what's happening is there's an integration of technologies, a demand. Again, come back to these ideas of compute continuum, workload, and workflow consolidation. The ability to use data is a massive undertaking that actually requires the benefits of both information technology and operational technology working together to solve problems. And so I think when we look at this, as we have more and more experience across more and more customers, what we're helping not only our own teams understand, but our channel partners understand, is how to have these consultative dialogues with the customers to get to the most important opportunities they're trying to solve in these digital transformations, smart infrastructure, compute continuum applied to analytics and decision making. We're helping, really the customers get to the root of what's important and then apply the right technologies and the right offerings through our integrator partners. By the way, one last point I'll make on the opportunity here is that, folks like Intel and HP, even though we have big businesses and we're well-known brands, we don't have the full suite of resources we need to be able to solve these problems. We need the integrator, the software, and the service provider industries to come together to solve these problems. So the integrators and the channel partners are a perfect place for us to sort of put both of those things together and provide solutions that help the customers move forward.
Dennis, let's go back to you for this next question. What challenge do solution providers face while breaking into or growing in this space? And what do they need to start engaging customers?
The reason that we have to change the way we engage with our customers is we're no longer, as partners, selling to the data center. The data center has now moved out into the coffee shop or into the manufacturing location. That means we are now embedded with the people that are actually running the way the customer makes money. So if you're dealing with with the factory manager there, you cannot have this language of, oh yeah, so we use the latest Intel processor, it has so and so many cores, and we go DDR4, and then we're moving to DDR5, and all the conversations we used to have about the gear, that's out. Why? Because that plant manager cares about manufacturing the widgets that he's responsible for. So he doesn't care about how the sausage is made, he cares about the outcome. And that's actually that's sending shockwaves through the way we all go to market now, because that is a much higher level of selling. So, and I'm sure that many of the folks listening now going, yeah, but that's what we do. We are value add resellers. We normally talk to dentists all the time, and we know how to speak that language. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. My brother-in-law, he's an orthodontist. He got a new x-ray machine. He says, hey man, it has I think it's an Ethernet port on it. What am I supposed to do with that? And it was clear that while he's a great orthodontist, he doesn't know anything about IT. Closing that gap is actually what we all do together. We provide the building blocks, but it's the partner that takes the last mile to that customer, speaking the language that the customer understands. And that's why it's so important to look at it holistically and align it with outcomes the customer can understand.
To the point that Dennis made, the integrator community and the channel and service provider community is where we get the domain expertise in order to have those deep consultative discussions with the customer around what problems they're trying to solve, where the priorities are, and what those experiences are they're trying to implement within their enterprise. And that last mile of customization is really critical. We have what we call market-ready solutions. We have 600 market-ready solutions. And what we've learned in the last 3 years is that presenting a market-ready solution is a hit or miss proposition. If you're trying to come from the catalog out, it's a hit or miss proposition, because 9.9 times out of 10, what the customer is going to tell you is, well, that's not exactly what I'm trying to do, because the solution is presented is not unique to that particular customer. It's a general solution. It's in the customization of that solution to the specific needs of the customer that we actually be able to turn the value bolt and get to the key that unlocks the door in terms of actually opening up consumption of technology. So it's become consultative. The customer no longer wants to hear about the diversity at the edge and the complexity of the edge, and the OT world, the operational technology space, is infinitely more complex and much more fragmented than the IT space is. So actually combining integrator and channel partner talents is becoming more and more critical. We're seeing strategic relationships being built between domain expert or operational technology integrators that typically work on factory floors, together with IT integrators and solution providers that are working in the IT department, because these two areas are blending, they're merging. And that talent doesn't exist in the technology, it exists in the skill sets of the channels and the partners to market. And I think the last area that we're really trying to get people to understand is this idea of a digital transformation roadmap. The idea that the customer is trying to re-ideate their business, and they need help doing that. And so we're trying to tap into the digital transformation roadmap of the customer. That's not a technology roadmap. That's a experiences, services, ROI, roadmap they're trying to build, and how they operationally improve their enterprise, not only for themselves, but also for their customers. But then you connect it back through this enterprise architecture in terms of the technology ingestion and deployment engine that's all built on top of compute continuum, which is all these technologies that Dennis has been talking about. And frankly, having a very clean, common taxonomy, a very clean, common hardware and software architecture upon which to deploy that repeatedly again and again and again, and deal with that digital transformation roadmap is the key to what we're trying to drive forward. And I think that's a massive opportunity for our partners.
We're actually going to keep this very conversation going in our final segment, segment 3, HPE's position in the edge market, selling at the edge. So question 1 in this segment is for both of you, Dennis and Rick, and this is very familiar to what you were just talking about. Selling at the edge, like you were saying, is very different than selling traditional data center solutions. What are those key differentiators partners should be focusing on, and who are their target customers?
The old data center was sort of confined into a few locations, and there was a budget associated with it, and there were projects and all that. Now we're saying essentially that that big data center is being blown up. So, honey, I blew up the data center, right? And I stick all those little bits and pieces of compute out in the locations where business is transacted. Well, then you start saying, if that is the case, how do we engage with the customer? How do we sell to the customer? Because there's no customer on the planet who said, oh yeah, I have 40,000 locations worldwide, and here's my budgetary item to put a little data center out in every single one of them. Nobody has expected that. Nobody has budgeted for that. And this is really where we're seeing this wholesale shift to as a service. For example, if I go to a service provider, it could be any of the classic ones we're talking about. They have already purchased the gear, and I can go up there and rent space on their gear. Interesting observation. So if that's their data center in Oregon or wherever it is, right? But what if we take that data center concept and we now say it needs to be in every coffee shop? Do I have the money? And the answer is no. So how do we engage with the customer? Because all this is very good. I can go to a manufacturing plant and say, listen, we can put high resolution cameras and AI software, and it can actually cut down on the QA or quality assurance time, and you can free capacity to the tune of 20% extra capacity. And then the customer, of course, has the right to say, yeah, that's fine, but what's this going to cost me? And the answer is, and this is a little drum roll here, the answer is, it's free. And that's when the customer goes, what? Hold it. You can give me 20% extra capacity of all my 100 plants in each plant across the world, and you can do that for free? Come on. I'm not born yesterday. That's not how this works. You got to get paid. You run a business. I run a business. We got to get paid somewhere. And the answer is yes, but I sell it to you on a capacity basis. I only sell you what you need. I still install this little nano-sized data center and the cameras and everything as part of the solution for quality assurance. And this is really where it's super important to understand for the partners. You are selling solutions to problems. And solutions to problems is a bill of materials and a contract. Because if you say, oh yeah, here's a beautiful solution that's $100,000, you'll be shown the door. Because nobody has $100,000 laying around. Nobody. So that's why we're saying now, HPE, with the Green Lake initiative, with the Green Lake platform, we'll come out and we'll just Green Lake your business. That bootstraps your digital transformation, and the upfront cost is zero. But you have to sign up for a contract so you pay along as you go. And that makes sense, because if I get more free capacity, but I just I burden that ability to manufacture more widgets on the extra widgets that I manufacture, then there's a win for everybody. And that understanding that business mechanics is actually what the partners now are required to do. So we're not selling technology anymore. We're selling outcomes. We're selling results.
And I think, one thing that our channel partners need to add to their portfolio is financial instruments. In addition to creating as a service models where, in effect, the customer's leasing the infrastructure in order to get, a scalable environment that is essentially scaled on demand to the needs of the business. I think that's an important concept. Another is this idea of converting Capex to Opex. I think there's a lot of financial instruments that are now being developed, whether they be called flooring programs, lease to own options, or even, services as a service. What you're now starting to see is these ideas where, the customer can define a problem, orchestrate their partners, put all the right elements together, deploy a solution, and turn that into a monthly operating expense as opposed to making it a huge capital expense. So we have to really imagine the business environment we're in and the needs of the customer. And a small business is going to have different needs than a medium business or a large business. So we have to be able to scale these capabilities into the needs of the market. I think probably the biggest thing is marrying together these skill sets. Again, I'll come back to it. I think, we tend to look at the four walls of our business and say, this is what I do. But what we're learning is the walls are sort of becoming fuzzy, and that they're starting to gray out. We're getting into a lot of gray space where the idea of a consulting organization, whether they be an engineering organization like an OTSI or a back-end IT consulting organization that's basically running their business on billable hours, can be merged together with margin-based businesses that have largely built their revenue on the buy-sell of products, buy low, sell a little higher, and add a value in between. So these ideas of value-added reselling together with consulting, together with these financial instruments, has become a whole new way of helping customers get to solutions that at the end of the day become, a contract of, a statement of performance and execution between a group of vendors trying to deliver outcomes for an end user, and it's sharing in that success. So I think there's lots of different ways to architect this, but I think at the end of the day, as long as we have these common commercial off-the-shelf scalable hardware and software tools, what we need to do is we need to help educate this audience on how to become more sophisticated in the use of this toolbox we're describing of capability, so that they become very front-footed and forward in helping their customers connect to these toolboxes and apply these toolboxes to their business and to, as Dennis said, those outcomes.
Dennis, this next question is for you. How can partners get started selling at the edge with HPE?
Oh, it's very simple. There's one answer for that. It's GreenLake. So GreenLake is really the operating environment that encompasses all this, right? Because what is exactly right what Rick is saying is there's a bunch of workloads in each location, right? There's not just one workload. That's so back in the day when you said one workload like VDI, let's take that one, right? A lot of folks will say, oh, VDI, that was a data center conversation, right? That might very well be VDI as part of a hospital solution, but there are a bunch of other stuff too in that hospital, right? For example, there will be the ability to do cancer diagnosis based on x-rays. Is that not another workload? That's sort of a quality assurance, if you will, for humans, right? That's exactly right. It's helping the doctors being better at diagnosing potential illnesses. And you look at that going, okay, but shouldn't that be part of the VDI? Yeah. Okay, so that was at least two workloads there we could identify. And the answer really is there is a bouquet of workloads in each individual vertical location. So how do you talk about all this complexity as a partner? The answer is GreenLake. GreenLake is actually where you have a GreenLake solution that is a edge to cloud operating environment that actually allows you to build the bouquet of workloads. So as you know, we are actually building out GreenLake more and more services every day, and you'll continue to see that. So you start saying, well, wait a minute. So that's just all software, right? No, because that stuff in that hospital has to run on something. So this is where Lighthouse, which is Intel processors and servers integrated into a easy to install appliance-like experience at that hospital, but also with all the tool sets on top, running all the different workloads. So where do you get started selling this stuff? Say GreenLake, because GreenLake is sort of like the magnet that pulls all the bits and bobs. And then we can double click and say, wait a minute, what kind of VDI solution is it for the hospital? We need to understand which partner provides the AI software to actually do the cancer diagnosis. Yes, but all this is all one big sort of home theater kit, right? It's all one big kit for all the workloads in the hospital. So how do you have that conversation with somebody? Just to go in and say, sir, you should buy GreenLake, right? That won't work. So how do you understand the customer's problems or challenges? Here's a trick. What do you think flows through all this stuff? What flows around the edge locations? What is computed upon at the edge location? It is data. Big idea. So you can actually have this conversation. I've done it. I do it in the executive briefing center all the time. So for me to understand how this hospital functions, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not a nurse. I don't know anything about this. But what I can ask about, since I'm in the IT business, I can ask about data flow. So I can say, Do you have X-ray machines that are hooked up to Ethernet? Can we extract that information? Let me understand how much data, how many X-rays do you do a day? What's the resolution per X-ray? We are beginning to see the data footprint. And what Rick was alluding to is the digital twin. You actually, the footprints of the digital twin is emerging from the digital exhaust that is happening if you start looking at data flow. Because here's our insight, guys. Data flow follows business flow. Big idea. So if you want to show how you engage with the customer, how you engage with HPE, we know the answer is going to be a GreenLake contract full of a lot of little details, but what is this sucker going to look like, right? What that thing is going to look like is data flow. Begin to understand the data flow. If you understand the data flow, you understand the flow of goods and services, you understand the customer's business. And as a partner, that's what the customer wants more than anything. They are drowning in complexity. And if you can come in there and navigate through the complexity by understanding their business, they'll say, man, I was glad that Katie came in here today. She really understands what's going on here. I want to work with her going forward. So there's a trick straight from the playbook here. Feel free to use it. Understand data flow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Dennis. I think, we started the journey several years ago around this idea of follow the data. I mean, I think, the data leads to, the analytics leads to the results and decision making that then leads to the outcomes. I think, if you start with, what's, it's an age old question, what's keeping you up at night, but bottom line is, what most people are trying to do is figure out how to run a business that, remotely. And so, I think if you start at the end, which is what's that big problem you're trying to solve, and what are the big blockers, that are preventing you from getting there? And I think what you're going to find out most times is the customer is just overwhelmed in options. So our ability to help narrow the options down and help them see the forest for the trees on the technology, but then focus back on the service deployment to be developed and where the data is coming from in order to do that are the two most important starting elements. So what we're coaching our sales teams to do, by the way, is go find that person in every company, because it exists in every company now. Go find the person that is mandated by the C-suite to drive this idea of digital transformation, the key to build the DX roadmap is what I call it, the DX roadmap. And you're going to find there's a chief data officer, a chief data science officer, an IT executive, an OT executive, a line of business. There is someone that is now owning this idea of digitally transforming the enterprise and applying analytics and business intelligence to outcomes and experiences. And I think that's where we start. And then the last thing I would say is don't wait. This is a huge opportunity, and there's going to be a first mover's advantage. I think with companies like HP and Intel, we have a deep understanding of who all the players are in the market and what values they bring, and these ideas of matchmaking to an operational result, to actually build operational coalitions across our partner base, leverage through our channel and integrator and service and solution provider partners is absolutely critical. So my first thing is, how do you get started? Call us. Reach out to your local Intel guy, reach out to your local HP guy. Don't wait, a guy or gal, and let's make sure that we're giving you the help you need to have the right dialogue with your customer, and then to start orchestrating the very rich base of solution elements we have in order to address the needs of the customer and deliver those outcomes, but do it in a painless, sort of seamless way. And I think where HP and Intel are working is how do we provide the solution partners and our channels the easy buttons to put together these software stacks together with these hardware stacks with products like GreenLake, with offerings like GreenLake that allow us and afford us the opportunity to make it easier and easier for the integrator community to get into these dialogues with their customers and to orchestrate their product line roadmap.
Rick, Dennis, thank you both for sharing with us how partners have a unique opportunity to grow at the edge with HPE and Intel. And thank you at home for watching our webinar, Unlock Success at the Edge with HPE. Stay tuned for future conversations about edge computing with HPE and Intel. Once again, I'm Katie Bavoso. Take care.